we can give our emergency responders so much more information, real time, as it happens. It would have a strong belief that it will help save lives, save property, save time, and get into the right place with the right level of services.
Well, hello, everyone, again. Welcome to the Temporal 3 podcast. Today, we are coming from NTC's National Training Center Conference. Show your badge, guys.
In Las Vegas at the South Point Hotel and Casino.
In Las Vegas.
I'm not wearing.
That's okay. Well, you're here, Daniel. Our guest today is Mr. Daniel Rosales from Telguard. Daniel, let's start off first talking about the importance of NICET certification, the importance of training. From your perspective, how important is training for your dealers?
I think, honestly, selfishly speaking, right, on behalf of Telguard, the big deal about NICET certification and the renewal process is that it keeps our consumers of our product in the know, not so much with just the regional, local jurisdictions and whether requesting and whether approving, but with what's new, what's coming out, what's available. As you know, Telguard came into the picture, into the fire world with a performance-based changes, right? So it is 1,000% to our benefit that integrators out there are in the know with the latest pieces of code, even though their jurisdictions may not be looking at them just yet. So to me, NICET certification, the process of renewal, the escalation from level 1 to level 2 and all the requirements, it keeps our customers in the know on the possibilities of what the fire industry could be doing.
And Bryan, how important is NICET certification in our industry from your perspective?
Extremely important. And one thing that I like to remind our students about is that the NICET certification is attached to the individual, not to the employer. So this is an individually held certification. And not only is it a proof of professional competency, as Daniel said, it's very important to his dealers and them understanding code and being able to navigate code and understanding the way things work, but also it's a career path thing where as you move through the certification process, as you go from level 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, your opportunities increase. Your value to your employer and to potential other employers increases significantly. So one of the things I'd like to talk about today is something called performance-based technology. We've gotten discussions recently with some of our students about what exactly is performance-based technology. And performance-based technology.
What part of the code would you find that in, Bryan?
That would be in chapter 26 of NFPA 72. 26.6 specifically is where it starts out. And performance-based technology is a communications technology that was added into the code a few cycles back to basically serve as a catch-all for new technologies that were introduced for fire alarm communication. So performance-based technologies basically is something that NFPA set up and said, all right, we realize there are going to be new technologies that become available. As long as they meet the listing agency requirements and the performance requirements of NFPA 72, we're going to allow them to exist as a communications technology for fire alarm systems. And it's something that allows these newer, and I know the two big ones, cellular and IP, are not very new, but in terms of fire alarm communication compared to good old DACs and one-way and two-way radios and stuff like that, all the legacy technologies, they are actually pretty new technologies. And one of the original performance-based technologies, as Daniel mentioned, was cellular. And one of the leaders in cellular is Telguard. And the interesting thing about performance-based, again, is that whole thing about meeting those requirements and being listed, not specifically having any particular requirements like you see for one-way radio or two-way radio. Charles, what are your thoughts on performance-based technology?
Well, it's really interesting in the code. It doesn't require a secondary means of communication with some performance-based technologies. So I find that to be a key factor and also a benefit for our customers and installing dealers. What are your views on that, Bryan?
Absolutely. A huge benefit either as a backup communications path to like a DAC, or in most cases, I'd say as a primary communications path, because there certainly is a lot more flexibility in primary communication for performance-based technologies like IP and cellular. Daniel, what has been your experience from the field with that?
I think for us, really, it's sort of opening the door, right? And you hit it right on the head there when you mentioned that it's sort of forward thinking, right? We recognize what we have today. We recognize what we've been using for decades now when it comes to POTS technology, but we also recognize that they had limitations. The idea of redundancy, right, was basically something that we've been using for decades. The idea of a high level supervision is something that wouldn't be achievable with POTS because we would be tying up the phone lines and it would not allow the panel to actually send actual alarms, right? So it would be something that would be unnecessarily troublesome for phone lines. As we continue to move on, I think the ability to have performance-based technologies is going to create a new sense of what else can we do. Telguard came into the picture with cellular, which was already cellular as a technology was already pretty standardized as a consumer level technology. When we came in, it was basically a matter of taking that technology and making it work for what we had. I think moving towards the future, why should we have different requirements from a performance perspective for legacy technologies when we have these requirements for future technologies? So think of it this way. Are we giving POTS a pass because it was a technology that was already written into code? Or should we make sure that POTS and any other legacy technologies basically are able to meet the requirements that other new incoming technologies are bringing to the table? And if at some point we decide that new technologies have a stricter level of requirements that legacy technologies don't meet or cannot meet because of their technology deficiencies, maybe it's time that we as an industry kind of start looking at the future instead of hanging on to the past.
Absolutely.
Interesting you should bring that up because it always seems like the fire alarm code is several generations behind technology. Technology is going so fast these days. And the fire alarm code, even though it's updated every 3 years, just can't keep up. Bryan?
And Daniel brings up an interesting point about the supervision requirements. And one thing that I love about performance-based technologies is if you have a sole path or single path communication for performance-based technology, such as a cellular IP as a standalone device using a single pathway, you have a 1 hour supervision requirement. But if you have multiple paths, like a combination cellular and IP, one that will use two different pathways to communicate the signal, you move that up to a 6 hour supervision. However, in the 2013 edition of NFPA 72, one interesting thing that they did that really changed things for DACs was they changed DACs to 6 hour supervision instead of 24 hour, which is pretty significant. As Daniel said, now you're tying up those phone lines 4 times a day instead of once a day. And they also mandated the requirement for the DACs to use a secondary path that was a non-phone line path. So, yeah, they made some very interesting changes to 72 2013 that really impacted DACs as a communications option and created a huge opening, in my opinion, for performance-based, for more rapid adoption. Now, one of the other interesting things that I find about performance-based is that it is not specifically mentioned by name, but it's actually been in 72 since 2007. And it's been in there, but it has been permitted in there, and a lot of early adopter AHJs allowed it as a performance-based technology, but it really came into its own in later editions of the code.
Yeah, I remember the first that we kind of really dabbled into the firewall was with the 2010 edition, and it pointed out the 5-minute level supervision, and if anybody got into the sole path or single technology replacement for redundancy game at that point, having the 5-minute supervision was crazy. It was a very intense time for us cellular providers in the industry. But like anything, right? Code, it takes about 3 cycles for him to really get it right. That's usually what we say. So fine-tuned in 2013, and that's where we really the big changes, like you mentioned, came in, and there have been some minor adjustments for the most part, at least in regards to sole path and single technology. It has been pretty much the same.
Yep, absolutely. So, Daniel, as a manufacturer, you have cellular options. Actually, Telguard is a cellular company. In fact, one of the original ones from what I see working in distribution. I remember selling the Telguard communicators as auxiliary communicators to DACs and stuff like that. And certainly the product has evolved over the years. What do you all have that is new and exciting and that provides great solutions for our customer base?
Well, perfect. Yeah, actually, next year we turn 40. So, we've been going at it for a while.
Wow.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we really appreciate about the industry, and I know it was said before, right? They take their time. As a whole, the fire industry takes their time with adopting new technology, which I can appreciate from the point of view of waiting until something goes wrong somewhere else before we pick up, right, and go with it. So that 100% I appreciate that. I think one of the things that we're kind of getting to at this point is that we understand that cellular is a standard practice. Cellular is not a foreign concept anymore. So from Telguard's perspective, we are looking to innovate using cellular technology. So what's the next step? We know how to work with AT&T. We know how to work with Verizon. So our current product is a multi-carrier product. So it's a single device that we basically have contracts with all AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, and it allows the device to be the deciding factor. There is no contractual agreement to have one as a primary versus the other. The device itself will analyze what that specific installation location requires. It'll make a decision, rank them one through three, and basically choose a primary based on what we consider to be the best signal, the best carrier in that area. The beauty of what we do, right, is that we're not solely focused on signal strength. Our analysis, what we call the carrier selection process, actually takes a look at a couple of different points. We're basically getting on every network for a little bit of time, analyzing its performance, and then making a decision. Moving forward, should anything go wrong with the carrier of choice, we're going to immediately fail over to the next one. Now, here's the trick of what we do, right? We are not in a hurry to get back to the number one ranked. We are not in a hurry to get back to anybody else. So the way that I explain it to our customers, to our integrators, right, is think of it this way. If you have a phone that has full bars of signal strength, that's great. But if that phone happens to drop every couple of hours, drops to no bars and then comes back up to 4, is that really what you want to trust to your fire system? Or would you prefer that service that even though it only has 3 bars, never drops, never has a hiccup, reliable as can be? We're not streaming 4K quality video here. We're streaming just valuable information that needs to get from point A to point B. And that's what we're doing with a multi-carrier service. Like, choose a carrier that is your best shot at having the best signal. If that doesn't work out, go to the next one and stay on it. Stay on it until something happens that makes you want to change. So from a cellular perspective, that's sort of the thing that we're pushing out. As a company, what we are really trying to promote is not just with our product, but with the industry as a whole. It is time to get away from the limitations of POTS. It is time to get away from the limitations of having to send events in contact ID or SIA format. There is so much more information that we can deliver to the central station. And of course, as a whole, right, the fire remote supervision system, it's not just the fire panel, the control panel. It's not just the phone line or the cellular device. It's not just the receiver, right, at the central station side. It's a whole global system that needs to get all the way down to the dispatch center, to what kind of communication, what kind of information we give out to our emergency responders. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we emphasize that whether it's IP or whether it's cellular, right, we now live in a world where we can deliver more data than just contact ID, than just SIA. We live in a world that we can deliver more data than just a phone call to the emergency services with basic information. Once we open that gateway of cellular data, if panel manufacturers take it on and say, hey, we're gonna push more, we're gonna deliver more, we can give our emergency responders so much more information, real time, as it happens. It would have a strong belief that it will help save lives, save property, save time, and get into the right place with the right level of services.
Wow. That really sounds like a differentiator. Those innovations are outstanding. Bryan, what do you think?
Absolutely. And one interesting point that you bring up about, we're not watching 4K video as signals from a fire alarm system. And that's something people don't really think about. And yeah, like you said, that's a great analogy, that it's better to have a consistent signal, because you're basically sending an SMS message right now. You're sending the text of, hey, here's the signal from the fire alarm system. And, it's more important to have a reliable connection than a very strong connection. And I love the multi-carrier aspect of it as well, because now the product gets to choose, well, who's available, what's available. And I'm assuming it's done on site, too, that basically if AT&T goes down for some reason, T-Mobile and Verizon are both available as options.
100%. And the chances of, honestly,
which is a huge installer's job easier.
Exactly. And the chances of all 3 carriers being down at the same time, I mean, that's unheard of, right? Or I hope it is. I hope it doesn't really happen.
Yep.
And the reality of it is, if you're not getting signal with AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, that is just not a good candidate for a cellular option. Now we need to start looking at other pathways for remote supervision. So yeah, it gives you the best chance from a coverage perspective, from understanding, when you put a bid on a job, right? It doesn't matter what kind of service anybody has, as long as they have cellular service in the area, it's going to work.
The other part of your statement that excites me is giving the additional data to the first responders, because more data saves lives. The more they know about the conditions at the facility, the better they are prepared to respond to that. And being able to give them additional information about exactly what the fire alarm system is seeing is going to be huge. It's going to be tremendously helpful to them. So they get there, they know exactly where to go, what to do, what they're fighting. And I see that as something that's really, really exciting to me.
Yeah, and I think it all starts, it's got to start somewhere, right? I know that the Monitoring Association, TMA, is doing some great work in creating standards for delivery of more data. But also, we got to get rid of the bottlenecks. And right now, one of those is the need to use a dialer. So let's moving forward. Panel manufacturers are already are noticing the need for dialers kind of dying down. I'm noticing the opportunities, right, that come with opening up a data channel as opposed to just a phone connection, a dial-up connection. So I think the future is pretty bright for the fire industry as we move into looking at a data channel access as opposed to just contact ID limitations, CL limitations, or gosh, we even see some panels using Pulse format still out there, 4x2 that we still cater to.
With my limited exposure to working for NTC for these past almost 20 years, limited exposure, I was very into it when I was in distribution. I knew what all the panel manufacturers did, but now talking to manufacturers, yeah, you're right. A lot of them are just not supplying dialers anymore. For a long time, all the fire panels, unless it was just a very low-end panel, had a dual-line communicator. Now, communicator is a plug-in option, and a lot of them will use either provide the cellular or IP communicator built in, or it's a plug-in module. But now the days of a DAC built into a fire alarm panel are on their way out. It's not something that you're very commonly seeing anymore. And that data communication, I think you're right, is going to be huge and going to be very changing to our industry. Definitely going to make us better able to do our jobs. Charles, any thoughts?
I agree 100%. Not too long from now, archaeologists will be digging up dialers and saying, hey, put this in a museum.
That's right. There'll be museum pieces. Check out this DAC circa 2000. Well, Daniel, once again, I want to thank you for joining us on the Temporal 3 podcast today. As always, you've been interesting and informative. But one thing I want to discuss before we go, a personal topic between yourself and myself.
I knew it was coming. No.
Charles, you can stand by and listen to this one. Daniel doesn't want to talk about this subject. Daniel and I are both long-suffering Miami Dolphins fans. I'm a Miami homie, so I have dual loyalty to Miami and my current home, North Carolina. And Daniel's been a long-suffering Dolphins fan. So what do we do about the Dolphins, Daniel? Do we get rid of Tua? Do we get rid of McDaniel? Do we get rid of both of them? What do we do? Do we dig up Don Shula? And maybe a zombie Don Shula would be a good thing. I don't know. Bring back Marino.
I like that idea. Obviously, in the realistic world we live in, some decisions have to be made at some point. We can't. Gosh, it just hurts so much because I really like the personality of the coach, and I think everybody on the team likes the personality of the coach, but. When you have failing phone lines, you got to replace them. When you have a failing coach quarterback duo, at some point, you got to call it quits.
Yeah, we got to get new technology for the fish. Well, go fish. Well,
I think you need to bring back Ray Finkel.
Ray Finkel.
Wow, he went there.
He was the kicker.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Ace Ventura.
I think Dan Marino might have a problem with that one, but. Thank you again, Daniel, for joining us and for your informative conversation. For everybody that's listening to us, please be sure to subscribe and like this podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks again, everyone.
Signing off from Las Vegas.
Thank you so much.
Las Vegas.